What is everybody? Welcome to Truth and Transparency. Hello, welcome. All right. First important piece of hardware. Jonathan Lee Riches. I cannot now find his Jack Katovich episode. I used it a couple weeks back to show you.
Car. Remember how I mentioned Jack K earlier? Jack Katovich. His brother drives a white Hyundai Elantra. And if you take a look right here, this is off his brother. This is off his brother's page.
So I had to do some digging to be able to show you guys that it does and it did exist. And the reason that this is important is because I'm going to talk about something that needs to be talked about. We all know that the PCA has lied, but this is a big lie. So let's bring in Hector, and we'll come back to this. Hello, Hector. All right. From the PCA. On the evening of November 12, 2022, Chapin and Xana are seen by BF at the Sigma Chi house on the University of Idaho campus from approximately 9 to 1:45 a.m. Bethany saw them there. Now, BF also estimated that at approximately 1:45 a.m., Ethan and Xana returned to the King Road residence. And I said to myself, why in the world would this have to be something? What is that? My day go over there. Why would this have to be something like if Xana and Ethan didn't come back until 3 or 3:30? Like, what's the big problem, right? Like, why do we even have to pussyfoot around this? Like, it doesn't matter what time, just whatever the truth is, right? Well, I'm going to explain to you why. Ethan and Xana returned to the King Road residence at approximately 1:45 a.m. Well, I don't know if they're leaving that open for interpretation of the fact that they could have left. But BF also stated that Ethan did not live in the King Road residence, okay? But now, this is from Hippler's order, just out the womb. Order on state's motion in limine for text messages and 911 call. Why is this important now? Why is Lana bringing this up before she's about to start this interview? Because it's really, really important. Hippler determined that he was going to label the facts here based off of what happened at the grand jury. He is saying that the facts here in this section that I'm about to read, this is off of the grand jury. Okay, so why would this be important, Lana? Why are we talking about this? Well, I could not believe my eyes. After spending the evening out, roommates DM, BF, Kaylee, and Madison, they returned to their home at 1122 King Road in the early morning hours of November 13th. At approximately 2 a.m., they meet up in Kaylee's bedroom and talk for a while before going to bed. The fifth roommate, Xana, who was out with her boyfriend, Ethan, she was not home yet. Wait, what? Probable cause affidavit. It's supposed to be facts, you know? On the evening of November 12, 2022, this is page 3, Ethan and Xana are seen by Bethany at the Sigma Chi house from approximately 9 until 1:45 a.m. on November 13th. BF also estimated that approximately 1:45 a.m., that's when they returned to the King Road residence. Now, why would this be so important? That we have to have them home by at least 2. Why is that so important? To put in the probable cause. This is not the facts, though, guys. This is not what was testified to by Bethany and Dylan at the grand jury. At the grand jury, Ethan and Xana were not at home. And everybody that was home, Dylan, Bethany, Kaylee, and Madison, according to the survivors, went upstairs, were up in Kaylee's bedroom, and they were, quote unquote, hanging out and talking. That is normal. That's what me and my roommates did after being out, and if we were at different places, okay? That, to me, is the truth, that you would meet up in a bedroom, okay, and chit-chat and BS. Don't you think that would have come out day, I don't know, 1 that you interviewed them, that you interviewed one girl twice, okay? So why in a probable cause affidavit would you put that they were home when they weren't? Well, because we need to eliminate a white Elantra. Lana, what do you mean by that? Well, we need to eliminate a white Elantra. We can't have it that Ethan and Xana would have been coming home in a white Elantra.
He says, someplace cool, but I'm not telling you where it is. Now, I don't know if that means anything. I don't necessarily believe it does.
Now, I couldn't believe it when I wanted to go.
Drives a white.
When I wanted to go back and try to find JLR's, I have to go through my stuff where I recorded it so that I could salvage this. But Jack Katovich is not Jack D. Okay, Jack Katovich is a Sigma Chi brother of Ethan's. Jack Katovich has a Venmo from Ethan that night. Jack Katovich was known to drive people, be their pickup and their drop off. But if Jack Katovich had his brother's vehicle, or if somebody in their group, aka who is friends with Ethan and Xana, who they would have been, I don't know, getting a ride with or from or whatever, we have to have them home by 2. Why would that be such a big deal? Well, to me, the big deal comes in when you're going to put another vehicle there that's a white sedan, and it's after and in between 3:29 and 4 o'clock in the morning. That's why. And I couldn't believe it, though. I want to ask JLR now, did he remove his Jack Katovich episode? I can't find it. If you guys can find it, let me know. I know that I have it because I recorded it in one of my episodes, but when I can just usually write JLR investigates Jack Katovich and it would pop right up. I can't do that. So anyways, I wanted to touch base on that. I also wanted to touch base on the fact that Hippler is going off of, for whatever reason, Hippler is going off of the grand jury, and the grand jury is different than the probable cause affidavit. And the grand jury says that Ethan and Xana were not home. And then the grand jury gets in front of this, which is the roommates debated going out to a food truck for a late night snack. Well, that could only have been 2 of the roommates, because the other 2 roommates, meaning Kaylee and Maddie, just had gotten back from the food truck. Why would they ever contemplate going back there? That makes no sense. So, and I even put that in here. This makes no sense. And this is the sentence, which is the roommates debated going out to a food truck for a late snack, prompting DM to send a text at 2:10 a.m. to an Uber driver she knew to see if he was driving. Now, remember, these are Hippler's words. This is how he is envisioning things. These are all sealed exhibits. Let me see these exhibits. Okay. So now, again, just showing that 100% this is bullshit, BS. And here's the proof that it's BS. Xana and Ethan were not home at 2 o'clock in the night. Okay, now let's stop sharing screen there. I haven't seen this yet, and I got permission. I asked Daniel, and this is how this is going to work. Watch the interview. It's going to be on 1.5 speed. I have no idea what is said. I have not watched it. I'm watching it for the first time with all of you guys. I believe in freedom of speech, but there's a difference between freedom of speech and the fact that you're not going to come in my chat and derail it and or go at people. I'm not going to say anything more. I'm not going to say anything less. And the mods aren't going to say anything. All they're going to simply do is if they see a comment, they will just simply delete it. Not delete you and not time you out.
News today. I'm not sure how much you can go into it, but more or less, what kind of news would that be?
We got some word that there was some paperwork that came out. I believe there were subpoenas, but don't quote me on that. I don't know exactly what they were, but there's paperwork that came out that asked people to be prepared to go to court. So take that as a sign that Hitler's tight schedule is something he put together, and it looks like it's gonna happen. I'm kind of reading between the lines a little bit, but you know, I can't say that that's a bad sign. So I'm glad that it's another thing that made this day a pretty good day.
Yes, sir. You know, I've been excited. It's wrong. I've been liking what I've seen out of Judge Hitler. You know, not saying anything bad against Judge John Judge. It's just there's a different attitude, a different confidence, a different way of controlling the court. Have you noticed the difference? And I know you were a little bit against the move to Ada County. Do you feel the same way now?
You know, you can have both things, right? You can be disappointed that the community that was hurt the most isn't the one that's able to see the justice. And I don't want to live in a country or a world where only our biggest societies are the ones that are able to orchestrate justice. You know, you don't want to be in a situation where you have to be in a big city for you to be able to have the facilities and the resources to actually have justice. I think that's a bad message, and I'm still against that. But it is what it is. Idaho County, they didn't have the resources. They couldn't get it done. It was nothing against Hitler, but that courtroom was a fraction of the size of the one we're going to. I mean, it didn't even have an elevator. This one has an elevator of at least, I'm going to say 6 floors. I haven't been on all of them. I typically just go straight to Hitler's, which is on the 5th floor, and I get out there and go straight to his court. So insecurity, all the different things that they have, there's a lot that goes into a case that gets the attention of the nation. So I was disappointed that we had to move it, but I believed in the leadership of the state of Idaho that they would go out and find somebody who was built for this case, and that's exactly what happened. They went and found somebody who was understood the struggles that we were going through, and we got a leader that could go in there and clarify and understood the law, could figure it out on the fly, and you see that all the time. I mean, even presents logical arguments that I've been hoping somebody would, which just speeds the whole process up. Otherwise, you know, you send everyone home, then they build the arguments, and then they come back and they say something that could have been spoken right then and there. So I'm definitely happy with Hitler.
So right there, what I just noticed there is that Steve thinks that the judge is supposed to make these arguments versus the prosecution. The prosecution is supposed to make the arguments. The judge is the referee. So that's kind of how I see it. And me and Steve are going to agree here. Hitler is making their arguments. So I agree there with Steve that Hitler is making their arguments. But Hitler is supposed to be the referee, and the state is supposed to be making the arguments for the case.
And I think he's more than fair. And things are moving. You know, it felt like we went 2 years without anything happening. So I'm glad to be in a situation where this isn't every day of my life. Hopefully we don't go past 3 years, and you know, we get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You know, one of the things that I've really thought that has made a big difference in this case is the transparency that's also been possessed through this case and now through Judge Hitler. And how do you feel about the transparency, the information that is now going through? I mean, you know, this is a lot of information. We've had 911 calls, we've had text messages, we've had a lot of things that have come out recently that were sealed. As a family member of a victim, how do you see that information coming out, and how does it make you feel?
I'm not a fan of gag orders. When we first got one on us, we did a little research on them. We found out like the origins of them that we found in the United States went back to the 1800s, and they were used to basically silence the legal representation of unions. So when they started hiring lawyers with their fees and started to be able to have a lawyer tell them, hey, these these mines that we're going into aren't safe. You know, the whole bird canary in the gold mine, that goes back to these guys. They would go down there, and when the bird died, they ran. You know, that was their safety. So they hired lawyers, and then these lawyers started, you know, TV wasn't a thing. They went to the local newspaper and started saying and describing the conditions. And one of the legals of the time said, you need to shut him up. You got to shut those lawyers up. So they made a gag order. So they're not really, I'm not a fan of them. I don't like them at all. I think the truth coming from the court, the facts as they are, you know, you're still going to have jury members that decide what those ultimate facts are, but hiding information in the sake of thinking that you can control the narrative. You know, maybe when you had 3 news channels back in the day, you know, when I was a kid, you had like ABC, CBS, and NBC, and that was it. But those days are gone. I mean, you got these people that think he's innocent, and you got these people that think he's guilty, and there's every view in between. So you're not going to hear just one narrative. You're not going to hear 3 stations saying that he's guilty. And that was just one reason of a gag order, where they basically said that this individual couldn't get a fair trial. But like I said, the gag order goes back to suppressing a lot of truth. And I don't want to live in a country where we have to hide the truth.
I'll agree with that. But the suppression, just so we're clear about this, and what the gag order has done is Hitler's orders are coming from sealed exhibits. Okay. So it's Hitler's narrative, Hitler's conclusions from what he sees, not what we have seen. So I don't believe that there is transparency yet. Transparency is across the board. Go look at the docket. Every single exhibit in this case has been sealed. Every single one. We have still yet to see Ann Taylor's brief on the Franks. But yet we have an order from it. We still have yet to see Ann Taylor's brief, her motion on the IGG, but there's an order on it. And it's Hitler's eyes and his thoughts on it. I want to read the documents. I want to read the exhibits, because again, here in the past couple of days, Hitler has 6 orders. One of them had like a couple different people, because it was like the vague expert disclosures, whatever. Again, every single one of those exhibits sealed. So there's, and that's where everything's coming from. That's the meat and the potatoes.
As we know it, the facts that are found in an investigation. We have somebody who's been in jail for 3.5 years. You should have a lot of evidence, and society should agree that evidence is sound enough that we can keep these people off the streets. Otherwise, you release them on bail, you know? So I think our case, a lot of people try to say he's innocent until proven guilty. That's true. That's true in the most generic way. But we do have a grand jury, and that grand jury did an indictment. And that indictment basically.
Okay, good. I'm glad he said that. Yes, grand jury. Well, I welcomed everybody to the show by showing us the grand jury. What the grand jury was told and how he was arrested, literally page 3. On the evening of November 12th, 2022, Chapin and Kernodle are seen by BF at the Sigma Chi house on the campus from approximately 9 on November 12th to 1:45 on November 13th. BF also estimated, no wonder why they say the word estimated, that at approximately 1:45 a.m., they returned to the King Road residence. Knowing that was false, they put that in a probable cause affidavit for the arrest of him. That is not true. Now, why would anybody, they knew that wasn't true. The girls testified at the grand jury that Ethan and Xana were not home. So why would you put estimated at 1:45 if they got home when you know that they didn't? And everybody could sit there and say, it's no big deal. What's the big deal? And I'm going to tell you what the big deal is. It's because of the cars. How did Ethan and Xana get home? If they got home by a sedan that's white, it's a problem. And therefore, to eliminate that problem, they got home earlier. And now the judge who's signing off on this probable cause affidavit doesn't have to say, oh, wait a second, they're not home yet. And this car that could be driving around dropping off people, that was a white sedan.
Pulled him off the streets. So I remind people, I remind my children that we don't have like an innocent person in jail, that there is no evidence. We actually do have somebody in jail with a bunch of evidence. And if he doesn't have answers for that evidence, I believe the case is over.
Yeah, no, there's actually quite a bit of evidence against him that we know about. I'm sure there's even more we don't. You know, I think a lot of people look at the probable cause affidavit and say, hey, well, this has a lot of the information. And at the time, it probably did, but not so much anymore. I mean, the PCA was developed in probably 9 days from the moment that they, you know, got his name to the moment that they put him in handcuffs. And so a lot more time has gone since then. And, you know, well, let's kind of get back into it.
The probable cause affidavit, though, guys, is what you arrest somebody on. It matters. It has to be truthful, because in the end, if it's not, who would want someone like Brian Kober, who killed 4 kids, to ever be free? I know I don't. I know I don't. And if you do, hey, wait, we arrested somebody off of all of this is not true, and they knew it wasn't true. Oh, wait, what? And then you want us to believe everything, even though you know that you put stuff in a probable cause affidavit under a sworn statement to saying against the penalties and pains of perjury that this is accurate. I don't understand like that.
So let's go to the beginning. A lot of people have struggled with that night. Why that night? And a lot of folks have struggled with, if this was a guy that was trying to commit the perfect crime, he would have noticed the new vehicle. That was Kaylee's. Maybe he didn't know who it was. She had not been there for a while. A lot of people speculate that she'd moved out and there was nothing there anymore. Is that the case when it comes to what she was still living there or not?
She was spending way more time at our house. So depending on who this person was after, he may have chosen the date because that she was there. Because the previous 2 weeks she had been at our home and had been taking care of stuff. People that don't know the area, that community I think gets around 90,000 when it's full in term between WSU and UI. But when they're out, it drops down to like 20,000 people. So what that means is if you're a local and you're one of these kids being a barista or working on tips, the money's gone. It dries up. So they all get out of town once school's out. So, you know, she was up here, you know, hustling, doing, she can go back to her barista job. I know other kids, my son, Jack, they come up here and they, as long as you don't burn your employee, you give them a call and you can pick up a shift at any drop of a hat. And we don't have the seasonal flows out like they do, so they could come up here and make good money. So I don't think she was there that much. And he had stalked that place out 23 times at least that we know of. We know he'd done more than that. There's some surveillance that shows that some of the days that he was there, he didn't have his phone on. You know, the people got hung up, and even myself, over the stalking. The stalking in Idaho is defined as a certain profile. He was definitely stalking, surveilling, whatever whatever definition you want. That he didn't have reasons to be in that location within 100 yards, and I can guarantee you they've checked his bank records and seen if he was actually shopping. Like like some people are just naive and stupid. They want to be stupid. You know, they want to believe myths and fairy tales and be lied to. I don't have any time for those type of people. So yeah, we nailed down all these type of things. You know, when we talk with the prosecution, we're just like, let's make sure that we've checked bank records. Let's make sure that we can define everything that this individual is doing when he was making these trips. And you know, when you're talking about 23 trips, can a person make a perfect backstory every single time they're driving out there? Sure, some days you can go to Winco and pick up a 6-pack of some potato chips or milk or whatever, but it takes true discipline to do it every single time. And I know mistakes were made, and people think, you know, he was smart, and he, you know, it doesn't matter. The days of making a perfect crime, they're over. You can't do it. There's just too many sensories. I mean, every camera is a sensor. Every car on the road, every single year we get, there's more and more cars with cameras. You see all these morons that are, you know, keying Teslas. What kind of idiot doesn't realize Teslas have cameras on 24/7? You know, that they don't even need the card to be turned on. Yeah. So when you see stuff like that, your days of making a crime and not being seen, they're over. And thank God for that, because maybe people can just get over it and treat each other good and stop trying to cut out corners and trying to, it's very rare that you get some individual who thinks he's got visions of grandeur so much that they think that they can decide when people live and die. I mean, that's a psychopath. That's somebody who's, or it's just got a death wish, and he wants to go out and be famous off of what his actions are rather than who he is. So I think you had that place, stepped out, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's seen something that night that made him decide that he had to do it. He had to build up, and I think there was multiple times he went there and he thought it was going to be the night. And he got frustrated because there was a party or there were some people there and he wasn't allowed to do it. So he made a rash decision. He rushed himself and he went and did it. And, like I said, he's not as smart as he thinks he is. None of us are as smart as we think we are. If we think we can get away with it, and a whole community is not going to be able to figure out that we're involved.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned the 23 times that he was around that place. In the documents, it verifies or clarifies that on these occasions, these 23 times, that he was within 100 meters. And it was between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. Not when majority of your shopping is done and there's not a store within 100 meters of the victim's residence. You also
I haven't seen any documents that show that.
Mentioned that maybe perhaps he was out there with his phone off. The documents only bring up to November 17th. I don't know if you know or not, but I think that if Kaylee was maybe perhaps a subject of the target there, maybe there'd be some sort of correspondence there with the times that he was in the area with his phone off, or the nights that he went with his phone off was also the times that Kaylee may have been in town. If those days correspond together, then that might be something that really points in that direction. Back early on, you'd mentioned that injuries didn't match. A lot of people have speculated what you meant by that, including myself. I still don't know the answer. Would you mind explaining what you meant by that?
I'm careful with it because throughout this whole investigation, there were things that we found out on our own, and there was things that they shared with us, and that was one of the things that we kind of found out on our own. So I did share a little bit, and usually when I do share things, it's things that I didn't give my word that I wouldn't share it. It's hard to describe. I don't want to go too far down it, but I like how I said we talked to Mabbit, and she basically said that they were in the bed together. They had passed away, but she's seen markings and damages, so that made her suspect that that there was more to what had happened to them in that bedroom. So, I'll say he struck my daughter. I'll give that out. He punched her, and so for all those people who think he's a great guy, now he punched my daughter right in the face. So he's got some shit coming to him. We're coming for him. That's one thing that was a little bit different. There's more.
Okay, so WSU Kim, she told me that back in the day, she said that Kaylee was beat up. Kaylee was punched in the face to the point of almost not recognition. And that's where I was just like, where are you getting this information from? Like, where are you getting this from? And I have no idea who it was from. From my conversations with Kim, I understood it as that she got this from her daughters and their friends, which to me is like, wow, fast forward now to the point that we're at right now. If she didn't get this from Steve, which I don't believe that she did, I could be wrong. To come to find out that she knew that information. She called the FBI tip line a bunch of times. I would love to hear and see what those tips were that she called in. Before I had her on my show, I wanted to make sure that she was legit, and she was. She provided me her phone records to show that she made these calls. They were the day of, like, November 13th. So, yeah, that's what I'll say about that.
More to it, but
If you have a knife, why punch somebody? If you have two of your hands and one of them is occupying a knife, why would Kaylee ever get punched?
I'm gonna have to sit down with make sure that I don't say something that is gonna play into the case and tie anybody's hands.
Understood. Yeah, we definitely don't want to, I don't mean any disrespect either by the question, and I hope it's not too much. I've never wanted to ask yourself or anybody anything about the injuries or the severity. My thoughts had always been that obviously there would have to be a first person that he'd attack, and he'd probably have more of a surprise, and then a second person that he might have to have a little bit more quickly. But it sounds like it could be even more than that. Which is it's the whole thing is sad, and I apologize, and I'm sorry for your loss. And so, you mentioned that law enforcement, they were open with you in the beginning, and then at a certain point they stopped. Was there ever a time when they may have told you that they believed that the person who committed this crime was outside of her circle, a stranger, so to speak?
Yeah, very early on they talked about they being the FBI. So we have an FBI satellite in the location right here in Coeur d'Alene. So we went down there and they laid out a profile for us. Said we wouldn't be surprised if this individual picked this community on purpose. Because I guess they knew by the crime scene that this was a planned out event. There wasn't, they would know how something would look like if it's, like a domestic violence type thing. It's going to look different than a crime where somebody sneaks in, gets to the people, kills them, and then gets out and doesn't leave a bunch of evidence, a bunch of blood trails out and all that type of stuff. So, early on, they said that they think that this individual picked this community, they wouldn't be surprised if he was on hugging the border of Washington. He was on the Washington side. There was I think a Lewis and Clark murder case that was 5 victims, and they never figured out who it was. So if this person was studying law, they may have known that this community had already had a serial killer come into their area, and then they got away with it. So that, and if this person wanted to go to a college and go get, education, then, he had 2 colleges to pick from. And he was also going to an area that didn't have a history of always catching their serial killer. So I think they had identified that 100%. And they went down some scenarios of like what this person would probably behave like, what they would do, what their profile was. And the thing is, between the FBI, the state police, and my own investigation and investigator, and just having a presence online with all these kids that could reach out to us and talk to us, we found out a lot of information pretty early on. And I think maybe law enforcement was scared to have somebody who was that in tune with what was going on. We knew about the chief before it ever came forward. We knew about the white car day one. They were like, they're looking for a white car. We didn't come out and tell anyone that because we didn't want people flooding us with fake clues. That was one reason why we never even gave out some of the details on Kaylee, because we'd have people that say, oh, I know who did it, and this is how it went down. So then we'd say, well, what happened to Kaylee? And they could never, obviously they couldn't.
All right. Day number 1, white car. That to me makes sense if you looked at the video cameras day 1. But if you didn't look at the video cameras day 1, that would mean somebody would have to tell you about the white car. So it'll be interesting to see when they reviewed and drew up any reports about the white car.
Tell us what those details were. So we were doing the same thing that officers do. You keep some exclusive information back, so you can vet people that are trying to be a snitch or an informant. or they try to leverage, like, hey, I'm going to tell you this stuff about what this other guy did, so I can get out of jail, or I can things like that. So we went through some of that, and but I think when we were accurate and we had that information, there was definitely, I know individuals looked this up and said, how are you guys coming to this info? How are you guys getting this stuff? And maybe it was just luck, maybe it was determination, and I feel like there was times I worked on this case 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we figured some stuff out, and that can definitely intimidate people, especially for a person who's, I told him right off the beginning, you're not going to gag me. You're not going to silence me. I'm not going to play a part in helping the person who killed my daughter. I'm going to do everything in my path to make sure that I play a role, that this guy is killed and held 100% accountable to the fullest extent of the law, directly because he chose my family.
Yeah.
That's what
I think that any parent would be like that.
As a father myself, if I was really hoping, and I was in your situation, I'd probably be in the same boat, my man. Doing everything I possibly can, having as much attention as I possibly can get before it turns into like some sort of cold case. Because
somebody murdered your kid. That's how you would feel.
Positively say that may have been a fear at one point that they weren't going to catch this guy. Yeah,
I mean, we all hear about the truck driver or the rambling guy who just comes through your town. You know how hard it is when somebody who's doesn't have any connections to your community, and this individual didn't have any he didn't have a history. He was just moved out there. Mm-hmm. So those are the hardest cases. I've become very obsessed with working with legislators over this, because I'm like, something long-standing that we can do to help these children, this happened to them, is we can pass some laws that can help make it harder for somebody to come into our community and do something like this again. And one that's always been in the back of my mind, I've never worked on it, was just registering like truckers. If you're going to be an interstate trucker, you probably should have your fingerprints or something done into a system where just because there's just so much, it's impossible to ask a local police officer to investigate some guy who comes into your community for a couple hours and you're never going to see him again.
Yeah, 100%. The defense has brought up that they have a full of alternate suspects, and I know they have some blood on a handrail, and I know they have some other persons that they might look at. Maybe perhaps an incident that may or may not have occurred at Signakai. I don't know if it did or didn't. Have you heard anything about that situation, or is that just all rumored?
It's all rumored BS. I mean, he was with his sister, man. His kids are so good. I mean, he was doing his little date for his sister. I mean, wow. I mean, you see so many brothers and sisters fight and you can't stand each other, and these guys were she was inviting him over for like a dance to be around her brother. So it just goes to show how close these kids were. But yeah, I haven't heard no real any truth to any of that.
Another person that I think that the defense might look at it is Jack, and a lot of reason might be just because of that situation, or is that just all rumored?
It's all rumored BS. I mean, he was with his sister, man. His kids are so good. I mean, he was doing his little date for his sister. I mean, wow. I mean, you see so many brothers and sisters fight and you can't stand each other, and these guys were she was inviting him over for like a dance to be around her brother. So it just goes to show how close these kids were. But yeah, I haven't heard no real any truth to any of that.
Another person that I think that the defense might look at it is Jack, and a lot of reason might be just because he was with the girls that night at the corner club. He's the person that was getting phone calls.
No.
A lot of people still suspect that those phone calls may have been somebody else, without going into any details, because that's their business. But did you hear any voicemails, or was it just text messages? Was there like proof of life at the time when those voicemails
Good question.
The phone stuff was investigated by Christy and Olivia, so I wasn't around when they actually got into those things. I seen some of the screen captures, but I'm trying to help people understand how we know for a fact that Jack's not involved.
I don't think Jack is involved either.
There is the whole cast went into that neighborhood, and people are going to understand that cast detail is
Cast.
though we didn't get some of the timing records, there's still a lot of information there that they did get, and Jack is one of the people where they did get the timing records, which lets you go within feet. So they knew that Jack's phone was moving when he was in his bed sleeping and moving around.
Okay. So right here, basically, Steve outs the fact that the first person that they suspected was Jack D. He had the AT&T phone. Okay. That's sad. That's sad that these. So Jack D is the AT&T phone. That's the third one.
Whether that was under his pillow or it was on his blankets or whatever moving around. So they have a absolute certainty where Jack was that night. And there's surveillance that was going on around there that lets them know. I mean, of course, he could sneak up in the attic and go through the crawl space. You could always, you could do these YouTube crazy scenarios where he got out of the house without triggering any of the surveillance that they had. But realistically, they know exactly where he was. Now, is he going to be an alternative suspect? Or well, hopefully they don't put him through that. But if he does, he'll be coming into that courtroom with us right by his side. And he'll probably be staying over at our house at our Airbnb. So,
how's he doing?
Yeah, it's a waste of time, but she can only have certain kinds of suspects. The suspects have to play a part. They have to have some kind of evidence of being in that house. And a house with 6 different girls, there's going to be a lot of suspects.
Different girls.
That qualifies a lot of people that could justifiably be in that home. So that's what she's going to do. But I go back to my Idaho community and some of the things that I've already heard grand jury members talk about and hear and speak, whether it was Plum or some of the other people that recorded some of the things. They said, these guys aren't stupid. These women aren't stupid. They know a suspect when they see one. I remember one of the greatest questions that one of them asked was, I think they said they asked the judge to verify if he ever had a fishing or a hunting license since he bought the K-bar, since it was delivered to his house. And he did. But that just goes to show that how intelligent these guys are. They're thinking it through. Like, what reason would a guy have if he's not in the military? These guys out here are outdoorsmen. They know why you would have one of those. The K-bar is a military weapon to keep you, to fight other men. Really, that's what it's for. So you could be a moron and use it for filleting fish, but they wanted to rule that out. And maybe you're using it for hunting. You don't really know too much about hunting and the type of knives that most hunters use. But these guys are on top of it. And I think if he thinks he picked the right community, a bunch of dumb hillbillies, he's really in for a rude awakening.
Oh yeah, 100%. How is Jack doing? Is Murphy? Is he with Murphy? Is Murphy with Jack?
Yeah, they go camping. They do a lot of outdoor stuff. From what he said to us, we're hoping to do some fishing trips out here. We go into Montana. There's some lakes out that are pretty remote with some huge, big old rainbow trout. So,
thank you so much, Goldie.
We'll plan something.
$100.
We'll do something with him this summer, and every year he's out there doing something in the mountains out on these. We call them logging roads. They're just dirt.
All right, 49er girl. Thank you so much. Member for 15 months. Cheers. 1999 Noel. Lana never put the 911 call out there. Sure didn't. Never have. Jane Doe 499. The state needs to drop charge without prejudice now and continue the investigation. This is so bad. I don't know. We'll find out. Jane Doe back to backer. Steve is being lied to by the district attorney's office. They're using him to put out their narrative. They knew they couldn't silence him, so they're using him effectively. Steve wants to believe them. Broken heart emoji. This happens a lot on both sides. Ashley, what's good over there? They're stalking. The stalking lie has already been debunked. Good to see you in here, Ashley. Hope you're doing well. Cindy, nice name. Welcome. All right. Kind of confused on the whole. I don't know. In Ohio, people have knives in their cars. In like the little when they're driving, they have knives for safety. I don't know. But
road to take you out in the middle of nowhere and you can get away from it. I know he's going to be very stressed out. He's a very quiet kid. I mean, if you could look at somebody who would be like the least temperament to ever pull a crime like this off, it would be Jack. I mean, Jack is.
Yeah, I agree.
And Kaylee, they've been dating for 8 years, I think, and she said he had never even raised his voice to her. He had never ever insulted her in any fashion. They'd broken up for a while, and she went out with another guy, and he was so rude to her, and she was like, basically being around this guy in an hour, he had insulted me more than Jack had in 8 years. So she was like, I might not ever find another Jack again. I mean, that was their exact words to her mom. So I have no worries that they'll do that. I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it'll go anywhere.
Yeah, well, let him know that he'll be in my thoughts and prayers as long as with you and your family as well. Now, Brian Cover gets arrested. How did you find out about his arrest? When did you find out about his arrest?
They called Shannon Gray, our lawyer, right away, as soon as before us, and they probably gave him like a rundown of the situation and how much they could say, and some paperwork that came along with it in an email. And so then he called us and he shared with us and said, hey, they've arrested a guy. Here's his name. Here's his background. There's a message that I sent you guys with some PDFs, I think it was the affidavit and a couple other little side notes on there. I mean, it might have been some of the stuff from Pennsylvania. I don't remember exactly, but that's how we heard. It went straight to Shannon, then Shannon to us, and then we heard from Karen, and we started kind of just. We were super excited just because the next day we had a celebration of life, and we basically prayed that this person would be caught and we wouldn't have to go through that celebration of life thinking that this creep would be trying to be there among us and try to blend in and get some kind of satisfaction by watching us all suffering.
Yeah, I didn't know it was that much earlier before the celebration of life. I'm assuming the first thing that you're doing is researching this guy, and there's something called the Andrew Garrett discovery. Are you familiar with it?
I sure am. Yeah,
and it sure does seem like you guys were on the same page as far as the possibility of a social media account potentially belonging to Brian Koberger, following some of the victims of your daughter and Maddie and Xana. Do you still feel that way, that that's the right profile and that there was some sort of following, at least on the internet, of some sort?
Yeah. It was kind of confusing at the very beginning, and I'm sure it was confusing for the investigators, because I went in there one day with my family, and we were like, what happened to the LinkedIn? Why were you guys into our account? Why did you remove it? And they looked at us like we were from another planet. Eyes bulged, and we could tell they were being completely honest. They were like, we have no idea what you're talking about. Well, we later on figured out and investigated and found out that it was the FBI. So there was 2 parallel investigations going on at the same time. So I think, and I've been told that the FBI wanted clear lines. Like, you guys are going to be working on this stream of information. We're going to be working on this stream of information. The stalking was one of them. When I had to sit down meetings with them into our account, why did you remove it? And they looked at us like we were from another planet. Eyes bulge, and we could tell they were being completely honest. They were like, we have no idea what you're talking about. Well, we later on figured out and investigated and found out that it was the FBI. So there was 2 parallel investigations going on at the same time.
Okay. Thank you. Now I'm going to talk about this. There were 2 parallel investigations going on at the same time prior to her or his arrest. Very, very important information there. Pertinent information. Like, wow. Information. FBI had his name a long time ago.
So I think, and I've been told that the FBI wanted clear lines. Like, you guys are going to be working on this stream of information. We're going to be working on this stream of information. The stalking was one of them. When I had to sit down meetings with those FBI agents, they talked about how it was a 20-year term that they could possibly get if, because I was worried that things, I thought at one particular time, maybe I could have the charges dropped on Kaylee and picked up at the federal level. And then there would be a fail-safe in case something happened at the state level, if any mistakes were made, if anything got thrown out. We were just trying to be that careful. And
That's a bombshell right there. If the state messed up, could the FBI still charge Brian Kober with a federal crime? AKA like the whole violating the whole PCA, the whole using IgG is how you got to him, but you violated his rights. Oh my God, this is all going to go away because it's fruit of the poisonous tree. Can the FBI still take on the case then federally to do the federal statutes of stalking? You're not blocked. And I'm not commenting.
They basically let me know that they had an investigation that they could still pick up, even if something got messed up. This person was not going to walk free if somebody came.
This is very simple to understand, you guys. This is not an insane moment. This is the state messed up. Everybody knows that the state messed up. Everybody knows that the state lied in a probable cause affidavit. Everybody knows that the arrest of Brian Kober, if you truly, it's going to all play out, that the probable cause affidavit is all bullshit. Okay, remember, they need this new tip to be able to explain to the jury how they got to Brian Kober because the probable cause affidavit is not the truth. Okay, but the probable cause affidavit is the affidavit that got you the arrest of Brian Kober, which then got you the DNA of Brian Kober, which is what you matched to the sheath. Okay. If all of that goes out the window, then what do you have against Brian Kober? You have nothing. And then he would walk. So as any parent would want to know, like, okay, well, since the fucking state messes up, fuck them. Can we still go after Brian Kober for federal charges? What can we do federally? He's 100%. That's what he's talking
about. And heaven forbid, got caught lying, or the Brady, or whatever the different things that can throw evidence out. there was still another investigation that they felt very confident in. That I remember one of the agents saying, "We're the FBI. Do you think that a mass murder of 4 would be released on a technicality?" And I was like, "I don't know." And they're like, "No, we've."
Wow. Have you guys been watching the Karen Reed trial? Do you think that we're the FBI? Do you think that a mass murder is going to be let go on a technicality? If you guys been watching the Karen Reed trial, I would not be doing these interviews.
Evidence out. There was still another investigation that they felt very confident in. That I remember one of the agents saying, "We're the FBI. Do you think that a mass murder of 4 would be released on a technicality?" And I was like, "I don't know." And they're like, "No, we've sealed, we've looked, we have evidence. This individual will never be free again. 100%, we have the right guy. There's no doubt in our minds. And we can have him at the state level. We can have him at the federal level." So it built my confidence into sticking with the state level and not. It would have been more expensive. And I literally was at the point where I was like, if it means that we don't ever, Kaylee doesn't ever go to court for her, thing, I would have been fine with that, just to have the backup, just to have the know that if something went wrong. But they were like, no need. This is, I've had individuals that do nothing but capital cases, 100%. That's all they do every single day of their lives, say that this is the strongest case that they've ever worked upon. They've never seen a case with this much evidence.
It sure does seem like it. I mean, at this point, it sounds like they have pieced together his entire kill.
All right. I got to tell you guys that clearly the Lori Vallow case and the Chad Daybell case and the Lori Vallow Daybell case, that's Idaho, okay? They're not. I would think that, just so you know, that Lori Daybell did not get the death penalty off of a technicality.
From the mask to the knife to the sheath, the sharpener, the jumpsuit. I wouldn't be surprised if they found Vans shoes somewhere and other types of shoes and booties.
That's 13, right?
Yes, size 13. The judge mentioned something about a gift card as well. I thought that was interesting as far as the purchase goes. To me, if he did use a gift card, that just shows that he was trying to hide the purchase, and not very well, because he still got it delivered to his house by name. When you mentioned the FBI, I thought this case could have easily gone to the FBI, given the fact that a lot of that kill kit was purchased in Pennsylvania. He traveled to Washington. If he was doing some following online, one could perceive that some of that following may have been done in Washington.
The FBI would have
lines
taken
to go and park at their residence, and for at least on one night for over an hour, between 4 and.
I disagree, only because FBI would have taken it if FBI could have taken it. That's why they released Brian Culver's name on December 19th.
Or 10 to 4 a.m.
to Moscow.
Those are all pretty big signs that this could have gone federal. But
how?
They went through the state. And
they don't have, how do they have jurisdiction?
Yeah,
it's about jurisdiction.
One of the reasons that you can make it a federal case is if you conspired. If you're sitting there and you're doing things online, I think I'd have to go back and review the actual provision, but it talks about if you're committing a crime and you're using a computer to do the crime, and that K-bar being ordered there means that he's got premeditation and he started planning it back there and then went and committed it in another state and then or relocated to another state from the origins of the crime and then jumped over to Idaho. So I definitely think it could have qualified for a federal case, and I think they would have. I think there was really a close battle, and there was some back and forth on who was going to take this case over. But there was so much evidence that they were like, let's just let them. It is an Idaho thing. Let them have it. And I know one thing that they told me was, don't expect the death penalty if it goes federal.
Oh, got you. Yeah, that makes a big difference there.
Why?
100% wanted the death penalty. So
Luigi Mangione, it's a federal death penalty case.
that was one of the biggest reasons why we kept it where it was.
There you go. That makes the biggest difference there for me as well. You know, kind of going back to that night, there's video of a vehicle that's traveling around. There's also a video from another place on Linda Lane that captures also some traveling around. Early on, there was a lot of speculation. Some people still point at this, that they can hear things throughout earlier portions of the night.
Hearsay.
I'm not sure if you have or not, but if you heard any of the audio that may be closer to the victims' homes, do you hear any of those such things? Do you think there may be some sort of play with the audio on some of those footages?
I know the backstory of where that Linda Lane came from, and it was a money grab. It was literally, I know the exact person that went and purchased this thing, and
somebody purchased it.
Yeah, so they tried to get me to release it or discuss it or bring it up in one of the interviews that I was doing, you know, and get me to echo some of the things that were on it. So I had some people look at it themselves, and they were like, it's either been the audio has been manipulated, or it's so poor quality that they didn't have any confidence in it. And some of the things that are the times don't match up to the times that I know my daughter was moving and doing and sending taxes and all these different things. So, and plus we had the 1112, I think that is the other surveillance that basically we could hear a lot clearer during the exact same times. So anyone who thinks that they're breaking a case over these cameras and whatever they're hearing.
What about the time? What about the 3:30 to 4:06?
You heard something and everybody's going to throw this investigation off and not and you know overlook something that you found is so amazing. You know, this true crime stuff is it's an eye opener. You know, it sucks to have your daughter's murder be like some form of somebody's like entertainment, you know, and they like to go out there and stir up their followers and make you know narratives that are more like for novels than real life, you know. So it's terrible, and I don't know what I'm going to do if I ever cross one of these people.
Yeah,
I've thought to myself, do I just go to jail, and you know, do I just
not worth it.
But it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard, you know.
Yeah.
And that's not most of them. There's only a few that are like that. I mean, most people are trying to be honest, and like you are, and you have been. And it does, and I don't even expect you to always be right. You know, we haven't been right every time either. So, I just expect people to be honorable and don't purposely spin a narrative that you know in the back of your mind is false.
Absolutely.
And you just hope that your users never, you know, cross the same information that you found. You know, you go suppress certain things to keep your narrative alive longer. I'm almost positive that there's people doing that because I've seen other people make comments that said, hey, this happened at this time. This doesn't follow your scenario. And then they just strike that, you know, that thing's been deleted. You know, they delete it after a certain amount of time. So it tells me that this person isn't after the truth. They're just after, you know, rallying up their followers.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, I've seen that. I've seen that in a few different cases where, in different ones too, where this mob just kind of gets out of control, which is one of the things that I really try to go up against here on this channel is to put out there what's correct and accurate versus and to combat those that are trying to manipulate what is put out there. There's been literally a situation where there was a scenario with the DNA in this case where they were talking about how it doubled up. And the way it was explained to me was as if you had like an audio where you wanted to play an MP4 and an MP3, you had to change it. And so now you have the MP3 and the MP4, but they're both the same thing. And yet on these pro burger channels, they just hear that it doubled it, that they hit the pause button. They don't go into the explanation of why it is. And they leave a huge piece of context out. And that's what we tried to add on here is that context to make sure that everybody understands exactly what's going on. You brought up something interesting. You brought up the 1112 King Road video. Without going into too many details, because I don't want to violate any gag order, but when you have the opportunity to maybe view it or not, is there a distinct time difference between the DoorDasher? Do you see a DoorDash vehicle? And is that vehicle different than the white vehicle that is suspected to be Brian Coburn?
What I seen, yes, it's a different vehicle. The times line up with what the courts have specified. I often wonder if that vehicle crosses paths with the white Elantra. It looks to line up to where they possibly do, and that'd just make the case even that much stronger. Especially now, I don't the age of that car. I don't know if it would have a camera, and I don't know what. I've never done Uber Eats or any of those type of things, so I don't know what their rules are. If you have to have some way of tracking your vehicle, but yeah, there things. There's certain cameras that are a lot better at detailing what's going on, and they've triangulated all of the cameras together, so they're not relying on just one. And the timing that they do between when it hits one and then goes to another, then they can tell you the speed that it was doing. So that white car was all over that crime scene, and the person had their phone off, which we knew very early on with those FBI saying that we're almost looking more for someone who turned their phone off during these times. That was more of a red flag to them than having a phone on. Now, most of the phones, of course, they're going to go through all those people in that area and look for out of area numbers. So if those girls, their numbers weren't as interesting as if somebody that was from, let's say, Montana went through there, that had not shown up ever on all the previous dumps that they weren't just dumping that day. They were putting together all the things. So they were looking for outsiders, and
they just didn't do dumps that day.
also looking for somebody who had turned their phone off. Because what do college students never do? They never turn their phones off. Right. They never turn them off. I mean, they put them on a charger next to their bed. Why would your phone go off? And I used to have the exact term on this, but some of the Garretts, some of the people that I've spoken with, Shadow Dragon, there's a hard close. Don't quote me if that's the exact word it is. I'd have to go look at my records. But there's a way that they can identify when a phone's been turned off and how it's been turned off. And they can even tell you if the battery life, what it is. So when this moron turned off his phone, hard turned it off with 90-some plus battery life, and he's sitting in his car driving around, people, you're fools if you think that this is just all coincidence.
No, we don't know this information.
Coincidence that they're going to be checked.
Just so we're clear about this information has not been told to the public. That somebody had hard shut off their phone, had 90% battery life in their car. So
check it out. So how many stargazing apps do you got on that phone? How many you got on there, Bo? Because I don't think you got any. And believe it or not, those are actually pretty popular apps. I was shocked. So the amount of detail that these investigators have done, it's impressive. I mean, these are great, hardworking men. They shouldn't be attacked. They shouldn't be pulled into these conspiracies and all this stuff. I mean, a little bit goes with the job, but this case, I feel like it's taking it to another level. And I just don't think it's fair. I think it's foolish to think that you got Moscow in on some kind of conspiracy, and then you got Washington State, and then you got Idaho State, and then you got the federal. They're all working together. I mean, at what point is it just get so ridiculous? But maybe this is what Hollywood's done, is just poison people's minds to where they have every movie you watch has a flip and something happens at the very end, and that's what people are expecting in this case, because it's just so obvious. There's so much evidence pointing to one guy. They think that there has to be this curvature, some special ending, but this is real life people, and they got the right person. And there was a time where I was trying to be very open about who it was, but they laid it out in a way that still hasn't came out. There's stuff that is going to literally blow people's mind. Like this jury is going to be like the first one, an hour and a half, and go get him, indict him. He's done.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, people who think that these guys are going to be like sitting for hours stressing out on what argument Anne had. Anne is so desperate right now. It's a joke. She's so desperate that she's using the work that me and my family put together to get all those clues. We did those interviews so all these people would call, and if you see something, say something, and that led to a massive amount of tips. And now she's going through all that stuff, trying to find out somebody that can fit the profile of somebody she can say is an alternative suspect. But thank God Idaho has rules. So otherwise we'd probably be 4 weeks of her just rambling off just nonsense and just trying to overwhelm the jury with just waste time. And I still suspect that, but we won't be playing a part of that. And that's it. We're a different kind of family. She can say something in court, and then I'll get out of that courtroom and I'll rebut it. Mm-hmm. So I'm not here to help her have an easier case. Once that jury's secured in that room, there's nothing I can say on the camera that could ever reach to them. At that point, I'm letting it all out. Everything's coming out, and it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting because there's no holds bars at that point. We can once that jury's been selected, picked, and put into a chamber where they're not going to be watching the media, then they're so concerned. They're just making up stories like we wore. I never wore anything. None of the G's ever wore any of that. That's why we went back and said, go find it. Find some proof. And of course they backed off of that because they went and checked the cameras. There was no. Yeah. But when I leave that courtroom, I'll put on anything I want, and my family will put on anything they want, and they're not going to control that. So,
in Boston they put a buffer zone. I agree with Mr. G there, man. I don't think that anybody should tell you what you can and can't wear outside the courtroom and where you can be and where you can't be. I think that's absolute bullshit. But they did it in Boston, and they're telling you what you can and can't wear in so many yards from the courthouse. It's absurd, but it definitely, that's great. It's nuts.
Well, like I said, we're going to be a family that makes this individual look back and think, if there was one big mistake I made was going after a G, because those guys didn't stop. They just kept coming. And how much easier would have my life been if I didn't have to turn on the TV and always see that guy,
Yeah.
pointing out what I did.
100%. 100%. As an IT guy, apparently he puts his phone in a VPN when he turns it on at 4:48.
Mhm.
What does that tell you? What is a VPN for those that don't know, and what is somebody trying to accomplish with that?
VPN protects some of your identifiers, and normally on a PC, it's just mainly your IP. They're not nearly what people think they are. So what you could do is, so you're really tough. It's really hard to do this with a cell phone, because a cell phone. Here's the problem with the cell phone is the towers won't communicate with you until you prove that you have a contract to use their services. So what that means is when your phone comes up, goes through a boot order, and it goes out and says, hey, this is my unique identifiers. I'm this person. I'm on AT&T. I'm on Sprint, whatever it is. I got a vile contract, and this it's a certificate on that device says I want to use your tower, and it works. And then you put on a VPN, but that's already told the tower that you're there. Whereas a computer, you can have a VPN start before your internet starts. And then you can go out your internet and totally remain hidden. And so you look like you look like your ISP's number at that point. And you don't look like the house address. You're being able to hide your house address and look like the internet provider's address. But you can't do that on a cell phone. So this guy wasn't that smart. I mean, especially when it comes to IT. If he thought he could come out here and teach us, which we're all like ex-Californians, and people worked at like San Francisco and San Diego. I work with some brilliant individuals, MIT, all over. He was a moron. What he could have did, which we were trying to rule out, is if he had another phone and he tethered this one. So if he would have shared his Wi-Fi here and put VPN on there and then took this phone and then tethered it to that phone, he would have made it very, very difficult for them to track down. And then on this phone that doesn't have a cellular provider, doesn't have any contracts, took pictures, did all this stuff on that, we had to rule that out.
Yeah.
And that was a scary moment to think that, we could have had somebody that was truly a cloud forensic
expert,
smart individual. This guy was just a stupid kid that, thought he could have his moment out here with what I think you were talking about, like these rural police officers.
Rural, yeah.
Yeah, like these guys don't know what's coming. I'm this new East Coast kid that understands all this stuff, and I'm gonna show them how to use all this stuff. Yeah. The computer stuff is gonna do him in just as much as that DNA is.
Yeah, I agree. Early on, you had mentioned once that his phone may have touched the Wi-Fi. Is that accurate, or was that something that maybe? What did you mean by that? Because I haven't seen that in any document, and I'm curious about that.
Well, I was reading a certain document where it was talking about, I believe it was IEME ID, and those are associated with MAC tables. And I do know some stuff that's not public, and they were trying to get a hold of some of the records on the router. I may have just misread what I said, because it would have came out by now. The same people who make these lies up, and I'm like, well, where's your warrants? If some other person's involved, where are these warrants at? There's some guy out there that they hear on that Linda Lane. Probably shouldn't say his name just because
oh, go ahead.
He's probably sitting in jail wondering why people are even talking about him. I think Farley or some shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that guy, come on, give me a break, guys. Give me a break.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
It doesn't match up. It's a waste of time.
It sure is. It sure is. Overall, I think I strongly suspect they got the right guy.
Farley.
At this point, their only argument is that the DNA
Fuck you, Farley.
Or the sheath was planted. I don't even think they're arguing the DNA is his. In one of these recent documents, they reference how much DNA was found, and when I Google searched it, it's a large amount of DNA that was found on that
Those
knife
damn
on
Google
the
searches.
knife sheet. I think it's going to do him in. I don't think he has very many arguments left. I know right now he's throwing out autism and a bunch of other things. Some folks are thinking maybe he's trying to come up with something to push a plea deal. Have you heard of any type of plea deal? And do you think they would ask you first if they were going to go down that road?
By law, they have to. Idaho law, not federal law. We're building. Old Thompson, he was like a Santa Claus. I think Thompson's skin's gotten tougher, and I think he's gotten a little bit more fighter spirit. And I think seeing us battle with going through all the things that we've gone out with, there's stuff that people don't know. People like vandalizing, people showing up at our house, people posting pictures of our address, all this stuff.
What?
And I think he thought, if they're going to go through this, then I'm
whoever the fuck is doing that to that family, you guys are a bunch of fucking idiots. Why the fuck would you do that? Why? Absolutely fucking ridiculous.
I'm gonna do the will of the victims, and but I don't know if his heart was always in it. 100%. It's hard. Nobody really wants to murder, and go through a murder case and have to end somebody else's life. None of us want to do this, and we were forced to do this. We were forced into this behavior. We didn't want nothing to do with this loser. I mean, this guy was literally 27 years old, living with his parents. He's a complete loser. It's absolutely frustrating that my daughter got murdered by a complete loser. She's graduating a year early on the dean's list. Nobody else was graduating a year early in that around her. She was a rock star, and this loser ends up sneaking in and killing her. So the least he can do is pay the ultimate price. And I think I've said this before in the past. Maybe the reason we have these school shooters and maybe we have these mass killings is because we never force people, especially youth, that see somebody like Brian and there's all these fan clubs and stuff, and think, well, I'm that loser too. And the idea of me being on TV and the world talking about me, and I'm getting these suits and I'm getting vegan meals and I'm up on there and girls are sending me letters and people are putting money on my books. All of a sudden I'm somebody. And there's these confused kids that think being a killer somebody's better than being a nobody that I am doing nothing. And that's sad and that's terrible. And they need more parent, interactions and fathers. And I would ask them to go, join sports or find a family, and if a family can be a football team, a baseball team, a basketball team, it could be a church, it could be a lot of other things, but don't think that it's all, girls and all that stuff. Matter of fact, one of the laws we're working on is once this individual has been charged, you put money on his books and we'll be taking that money. It won't be going. Yeah, it will be going to pay for his prosecution and to help victims and mothers and people with counseling and other things. So go ahead and send money now, but once he's convicted, he'll never see $1 again.
Yeah, that's the way it should be. He obviously he's not convicted yet, but once he is convicted of this crime, there's a saying, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. And it's for a reason. And it's more than just sitting behind bars. I mean, it's the punishment that's behind it as well.
Yeah. Another thing about the death row is what people don't, maybe they do know. I never knew. It's 23-1. So you're locked down 23 hours and you get 1 hour out. So you can't go and enroll in colleges. You can't pursue higher education. You can't go and have dreams of, motivating other people to do what you did. This individual's sick. He studied crime. He studied the BTK killer. His professor was literally orchestrated a private session with him where she got private interviews so she could make a book, an exclusive book, and then she split the profits with him. So then he could use that money to flex in prison and buy cigarettes and buy power and buy influence in there. And we're not going to let that happen. That ain't going to happen in Idaho, and that's not going to happen to him. But that means we got to work with legislators, and we got to find like-minded people that truly care about their community, and put out the message that this person picked the wrong state to do this in, and we've done everything to make sure that we don't attract this type of behavior ever again.
Yes, sir. Well, if you need any help from me putting out any word or petitions or any of those type of things, you got it.
I like your shirt. Your shirt's right on the same page, you know.
Yeah.
Firing Squad. You see that Firing Squad? We'll probably have a shirt for that, you know, on these press days that we're in court when we get out of the courtroom. But yeah, that chair they put you in, shit gets real when you get in that chair, I'm sure. When they strap you into that bad boy.
100%. And I think, I don't think it's going to be that long of a trial. I know that they're anticipating, I think they said 3 months, but at the end of it, I know there's a lot of evidence. I don't think the defense is going to have much to fight back, to be honest with you. I mean, at this point, their biggest argument is a partial alibi over an hour before the murders happened. And in an area where it's not exculpatory for him to continue to just turn down that road that heads to Sunshine, and it gets him right there in front of Floyd's cannabis shop before 302 again. You know, that's what they're working with. And if that's what they have, it shouldn't be very long.
Oh, the statistics of this case are just incredible. So people who say that this is just circumstantial evidence, they're not talking to professionals, because I'm talking to professionals, and they say that there's direct evidence all over this case. This case is, like I said, this individual does nothing but capital cases, and this is the most that he's ever seen. And I live by that. We will show that. So DM, that's direct evidence. DM's testimony. And people think, oh, well, whoopie doo-dah, they're bushy eyebrows, and it's a white guy. Well, do you realize, people, that they've run the stats on this? A guy at that age, the category, I think they went to like 30 to I think like 19 or 18, and said, what percentage is male? And so you remove, and in college towns, there's more girls going to college than there is males. So then that dropped it into, like, let's say 46. And then they said, okay, white. Then that dropped it lower. And then they said lean. That was the one that got my attention. 70% of people in that age category are overweight. So now you got an individual who, as eyewitnesses there, that literally like 2 out of 10 meet that qualification, a white guy that's lean.
Yeah.
And he has a white car, and he's out there, and for some reason he doesn't have an alibi. That's the part that gets me, is these pro burgers that are just brain dead. Like, he doesn't have an alibi. You know how many times Ann has begged him to give her an alibi? He won't give it because he doesn't have one, and he's never going to have one. The dude did it. It's that simple. And thank God we have a law that basically makes somebody come out and say, hey, you plan on saying you were somewhere else, then you need to, like, give the defense a chance to verify that. Because what if you say you were XYZ person? Well, they need to go interview that person and verify it.
Yeah.
You know, Thompson spotted out multiple times. You can't hide your evidence and then drop it the very last minute and then say, haha, you didn't get to go find out that this isn't true. This person doesn't live in the state anymore. They're over in another country. You know, you can't just drop this. So he doesn't have an alibi, people. I mean, what? Come on. Who's out at 2:50ish, turns their phone off, looking around on stars when it was foggy and it was icy and it starts to snow? Yeah. I mean, come on. I mean, and yeah, they know exactly all about that park. We've talked to the person that worked at that park. Yeah, there's cameras at that park. We'll see. And like I said, ain't got no freaking star apps that, like, you can point your camera up there and record them and it'll tell you exactly, identify those stars. This guy's done, man. He's done. He's completely done in so many ways. That's just frustrating that there's even channels that can play these people. But I noticed they're getting less and less. Hitler has cleared things up, and that's just by exposing the truth. But there's more, and it's going to get. But I thought when these Proberg delusional self-identifying, that's what really gets down to me, is I think some people
are these?
as a Proberg. They identify as somebody who does a little blow and hangs out and is a little misfit and nobody likes them. And there's all these really popular people out there, and they have it coming to them, man, because they never really understood how special they were. And I think it's more of a reflection of them than it is the case, because the case is so strong that I thought when that Amazon order went to his door and he's deleting his history and his own.
Who the fuck is doing cocaine on their channels? I want to see this stuff, because the person that I saw doing cocaine on their channel was that Demetrius dude. Remember I showed you guys that stuff? He had he had pictures of cocaine chopping up with an ID. Jen says, I apologize, I got heated. This is hard for me. I want to know what pro burgers out there fucking that you guys have money to buy cocaine, you fucking coke fucking whores. You fucking all up all night fucking pro burgers, fucking doing coke, you motherfuckers. You sick fucks. They're probably doing crack, Steve. There's no way they can afford coke. These pro burgers. I'll tell you what, I laughed to myself when he said, this 27-year-old fucking loser living with his fucking parents. Well, that's accurate. 27 living with your parents. Who's got cocaine? God damn it.
Own family is like, what the heck is going on with our brother? Our brother's like losing his mind. That they would jump ship, and some did, but they're still people who just can overlook. No alibi. The murder weapon's in his house, in his possession. He doesn't have it anymore. He doesn't have any of the items associated. Yeah, and this Dickie's outfit, people, they've gone to the actual stores and looked up the inventory, exactly what is in those things. And there's only a certain amount. For those who don't know, Pullman and Moscow are very, very small towns. So your Dickie's selection is like this big. You know, it's that big. Maybe a little bit bigger than that, but not much. It's not like a Dickies that you see in the city where there's all these things. There's Dickie boots and all. There's very slim things that this individual could have bought. And it's like a monkey suit, you know, like a suit you put on where you're changing oil and the oil could literally pour off of you.
Right.
So, yeah. That's why they're not fighting the fingernails and all that stuff. And it was one of the reasons why we were a little frustrated early on, like where we were like, why don't we say, you know, if you see somebody with a scratch on their face and, you know, you see something, like say something. You know, we got all this media. We could do it. And you know, those are the type. That's probably part of the reason why they, you know, share certain things with us. Is they're like, this guy, we don't want him to go on there and say something like that because it's not relevant. Because this person literally had a Dickies outfit on, was covered head to toe, had a mask with his eyes. You couldn't even scratch the guy. You couldn't even scratch. It's like a paper he wrote. It's like the guy wrote about his own crime. I mean, these people, it just blows my mind. I mean, he writes about his own crime. He interviews individuals and investigates them to figure out how he can incorporate that into his crime. We had people write us letters that were like, I was one of the people that was interviewed, and he was obsessed with how I was picking my victims. He was picking victims. This guy said, I told him I picked my victims after they called 911 or their neighbors called 911 on them for a noise complaint, and the husband or the boyfriend was hauled off to jail. Then he would go and he goes, there's certain neighborhoods where they had money. Then I would go in there because I knew the mail wasn't there. And he said, and Brian called him back repeatedly. And he said, I got a sense that he was really enjoying my stories and how I was telling passed out women, butt naked. And he went into those and was just like, he really liked my story. He liked that.
Wait a second. Who the fuck? Noise complaints. No, I gotta write this down. Noise complaints. Dude, I'm sorry, but Idaho, I've never seen a college. I do FOIA requests all the time. The only place I see noise complaints like a motherfucker is Idaho. Like, go look at WSU's. Like, let's look up some noise complaints. That he would look up, noise complaints, and then I would know. Then there'd be like a DV situation, and then the husband would be hauled off, and then I knew that the female was alone. And I can't wait for this person to testify. These, witness, this lay witness here from. Interesting. Brian was obsessed with this noise complaint guy. I want to hear about that.
And then I started wondering, well, who was calling 911 on these kids?
Yeah,
especially in the daytime, in the middle of the day.
Who was? That's what I said.
They're next to a stadium.
Yeah,
a football stadium. How do you get a noise complaint in a college town in the daytime?
Absolutely.
So, you know, maybe you're just trying to figure out how long it takes them to show up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Well,
I researched all that though.
You know, like if who leaves, who stays, you know, do they come back? You know, if you were to call 911 while there's a party, does everybody not come back? You know, is that what you need to do?
And if you get a warning that if we come back here, we're going to find you, somebody's going to jail.
Yeah. Might
be a time where you want to sneak in or do a little surveillance around that house, because that might be the time where you want to go in there, because the last thing they want to do is pick up and call 911.
You know, it was awfully quiet that night. And I think that a lot of that had to do with, one, there was other parties in other places in town, but two, there was also I guess, minors in possession of
But
alcohol.
okay.
Deterrent going out.
It's
There was the stop.
It's really interesting that he mentions that because I have all the 911 calls and I know who all the 911 callers were, and they're not Brian. Interesting that he'd bring that up.
By the Banfield, by undercover officers in the area trying to stop underage drinking and loud noises. You know, I often wondered if Coburger was aware of that going on that night, and if maybe that's why that led to one of the reasons why, because he knew that there would be some sort of enforcement out that night that would prevent loud parties or a party in that neighborhood.
What?
Yeah, we have somebody who was working in a department that was in charge of all those programs.
Interesting.
So yeah, I think where your mind's going is a logical conclusion of what the behavior footprint that this person's done. And believe me, they've analyzed this footprint. I mean, somebody who goes through the exercise of doing a survey in Reddit, and if you go look at the times, the guy had already graduated.
Yeah.
And it wasn't used in his graduation, his whatever, his final.
Thesis.
Yeah, his thesis, his final. So, I'd be shocked if this individual didn't know a lot.
Why
of what
were
was
other
going
people's
on,
names on the report?
From the police standpoint on both sides of that state, you know, Washington and Idaho. And I think that scared some of the local police departments, you know. And I mean, you read one of them and where they're like, thank God, you know, we didn't hire this guy. It would have been that much uglier if you know, that email that came out saying that he tried to apply for that job when he first came up, but he eventually would have got part of that program. I'm pretty much, I've been told that program is a requirement for graduation for the PhD. So, you know, he was in tune with what those guys were doing.
Yes, but I mean, it sounded like he applied in the spring because of that email that came out. Maybe it was just a reference to what was coming out, but the document, the PCA, references a essay that he wrote in the fall when he applied. And so I thought that if he was applying again in the fall, that meant that he didn't get the job in the spring, given his background, being a former person who was addicted to heroin and perhaps some of the things that may have happened to him at other schools, or even his job as a security officer may have prevented him from passing a background check. You know, and you know, I was concerned that he may never became well, not concerned. I was glad that he probably wasn't ever going to be a police officer. But yeah,
for what?
That's interesting.
I think he had visions of himself being that. Whether they would have, maybe he doesn't slip through the cracks. I understood that he slipped through some cracks already because of COVID.
Yeah.
Some of the background checks were not done because of the COVID stuff going on. I have no proof that that's true or not. It's just insiders that told me what was going on during that time. Certain labs were closed because of COVID. Campuses were not all open. I know that for a fact. So I would like to think that they would have caught him.
Yeah, I think the professor that recommended him to the PhD program said that he had actually never met, or she'd never met Brian Coburger in person. Everything was online.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the person that actually recommended him.
Is that Ramsey?
No, it was a different Bulger, I think was her last name.
I don't know anything about that individual. That's interesting.
Yeah, she's the one who recommended him to the PhD program. She said that he was one of two. He was one of two students to recommend that she's ever recommended. And that he was very bright and brilliant, etc. But that she never met. That it was during online courses due to COVID and everything else that was going on during that time.
Well, that makes a lot more sense because he creeped out every girl that actually got around him. I just got a call yesterday from a girl that I was asking permission to use her name to investigate one of the reports that she put in after this all went down. She said she hadn't heard much afterwards. So yeah, there's a lot of women that's why they're like trying to make this whole ASD. I heard that came from his mama who went and dug through his old records because these medical records aren't back in the 90s and the early 2000s. They weren't, there was no EMS, electronic medical record system back then that is still actively. Now you got cancer or something like that. Your records are probably going to still be out there. But if, you got a broken finger or something in 2001, don't be surprised if you go to a doctor visit and they can't pull that record up. But I understood that somebody went and found some of his old records and tried to convince the defense that they could use those to make an excuse for his odd behavior, because there's going to be student after student after student that are going to just talk about how they had a running tally on this guy. All the weirdness that
just so we're clear, this has already come out in court. The state is not calling to the witness stand students that are going to talk about this. This like was verbatim talked about in trial.
I had. I mean, he'd barely been there and he was getting kicked out. And in a university where that is super rare, guys. You don't just go into universities and see people getting fired. It's almost unheard of. So yeah, this guy was setting off, alarms all over the place. And yeah, this individual said that she made a police report and she wanted me to find out if they had found anything out on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's more police reports or more reports, as you mentioned, against him and about his behavior. I did hear about the Bryan tally and his behaviors. And I know that there was I think a document recently on the defensive side that stated that he was cleared. And one of the things that I walked it through with my audience is saying that, well, if he was cleared, that means there's an investigation. And if there's an investigation, that means there's an accusation. Now, what we do know is that these young ladies started to document things. So what probably happened was they reported some of this behavior and it was investigated and it was he said, she said type of stuff. And they were probably told to start to document things, which is why they had this tally going on in efforts to, because of how disturbing these behaviors were, so that they could have some sort of proof. Because if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. And I think that's a pretty clear path that you're seeing of escalation as well, as far as what's leading up to eventually would be that would happen on November 13th. Going back to Brian Koberger's 2020 writings that we spoke about just a few minutes ago, one of the things that really stood out to me was when he was referencing.
Okay, so just so you guys know, I have not seen this. This is my first time seeing this. I didn't know that this was a complete bash session on the defendant. I think that Steve Goncalves has every right to be completely irate with whoever fucking killed his kid and everything that he's feeling. I mean, can any of you guys imagine how you'd feel if somebody fucking killed your kid? And if you're a parent and you say no to that, then I don't think that you're a good parent. So I just didn't know. But you cannot sit here and tell me that as a parent, you wouldn't feel that some type of way about somebody that killed your kid. Okay. If you're a parent and you say, I wouldn't feel the way that Steve's feeling, I would say that you're fucking lying. But I wasn't expecting this. But and he's had enough of you motherfucking pro burgers out there, motherfuckers. You hear me? That makes me laugh. I don't know. Somebody killed my kid, I'd feel some fucking type of way.
Referencing, well, there's two things. He was referencing that there might be something that could throw off investigators that was left by the killer. And another thing is to check the doors for DNA as the person was leaving. Maybe perhaps they may have left DNA behind on the door. And we find out that the backsliding glass door was left open the entire time. Now, I strongly suspect that being the case because, well, if he's opening the door, he's touching it once, he's closing it again, it's touching it twice, and then opening it to get out. There's at least 3 different times that he's touching it. One time after he's already exerted himself, which would probably mean that he's sweating and things of that nature. That would be a high possibility for him to leave DNA behind. Well, he points that out in his 2020 writing. Sliding glass door is open. I see a huge connection there. Are you connecting the same dots as I am?
Yeah, very much so. And I know that there's some people looking at this exact same angle. So much so, like, I've heard a scenario where Xana goes in. Let's say she goes in, she gets her meal prepared. The DoorDash meal, goes to the bathroom, goes to her room, something, goes back into the kitchen and says, oh, there's somebody here. How does she know that? Because that slider's been left wide open and there's a kill kit, something there, some kind of package, some kind of thing that raises a flag that somebody just came into my house. And maybe you're hearing noises upstairs. And yeah, so I've seen a couple different scenarios.
But Xana didn't say that.
Been discussed. I don't have anything concrete. I can't go there, but I think that
well, the dog barking at the exact same time that you can hear whimpering and a thud says that the glass door had to have been open. It sounds like when Dylan woke up and she heard who she thought was Kaylee, probably because of the dog going up at the same time, is actually Xana coming downstairs. Well, Murphy would have been running with her, and it sounds like she went to Ethan and Murphy went outside. And I think when she hears somebody say, "It's okay, I'm here to help you," is that confrontation in the hallway between maybe Xana turns around to see what's going on, and there he is, and he says that in order to surprise her, I guess.
Yeah, one of the death penalty qualifiers is that actually I'm here to help you when that individual could have just left. They didn't have to kill him. So so people who talk all this madness about DM, she's been huge to the case, actually massive to the case, and you're going to find out that the late 911 call is actually going to be probably the final call, the final nail in his coffin. So there's even benefits to even the most tragic parts. I mean, the late call, if it leads to different evidence, then it's a good thing. And I say that knowing that my daughter wasn't going to survive what she was stabbed so many different times. So, and I can clarify a little bit of that too. Are
you referring to him going back out there? Like had she called 911 early, then he wouldn't have gone back at 9 o'clock, right? I'm
referring to a couple different things, but the coroner made it clear that at least two of the victims, it's hard for me to talk about, but they basically drowned it on their stab wounds. So the blood wasn't like all over the place, or it would explain why the blood was contained. So if you have a blanket over you and you're doing a lot of internal bleeding, your body will hold a portion of that. So like I said, everything that these people are trying to spin into some crazy conspiracy actually has a scientific background of why it is the way it is. And it's not Hollywood. It's not officers or a vacuum cleaner that went in there and vacuumed up stuff or whatever these crazy people want to say. I think the vacuum cleaner is just the K-bar with one of the shirts that he grabbed and wrapped it around it. So you have a K-bar in your hand and you wrap a shirt around it. What does it do? It goes big and then goes down.
Yeah. And
I think he just seen the amount of blood. He wasn't sure if it was his. Yeah, he's blood everywhere, so he just wrapped it up and built it out of the house with trying to mitigate the trail as much as he possibly could, because he was going to that door where he had the rest of his kit.
Do you think that we're going to find out in this trial what the prosecution believes he did with that knife?
I know some of the background of where they looked and what they were trying to find, and honestly, I think I just go to the simplest. Why has he got a shovel in the back of his car?
Sure.
And it's not these idiots. There's a co-blogger out there right now thinking to themselves that they're smart. No, you're stupid. You're an idiot. It was a mini one. It wasn't very big. You don't use it for snow. So anybody who thinks he was using that for snow, you're just a moron. You don't live out here. Nobody uses a shovel like that. You use a shovel like that for dirt, and it has a super tip. So yeah, driving around with a shovel tells me that he probably had something to do with that, because then that gives him the ability to go back and get it. And he showed all these. This was a fantasy for him. He planned it for a long time.
He kept the fucking shovel.
So that was going to be, the FBI were the ones that told they would be surprised about the kill kit. So it wasn't like I came up with that and I had some insight about this true crime stuff. I didn't know. They told me they wouldn't be surprised if he surveilled the house multiple times. They wouldn't be surprised if he snuck into the house. Whether he did or not, I'm not saying he did. I'm not saying he did or he didn't. I don't know that. But I don't know that the profile that they built of this individual said that this person was going to surveil the house and be comfortable with it. Because, it's a knife. When you use a knife, it shows a certain level of planning and a comfort level that you're going to go in there. And these houses, people might not know this either, that these floor plans after COVID, they all went online. They put floor plans so you didn't have to ask to go see these houses. You could go online, most of these rental places, and see the whole floor plan, including this one, because this is called the Queens on the Kings Road. This is where the Queens were, because it was on Kings Road, and it was the house that for multiple generations where every kid wanted to be because of the location. Put you, as soon as you got off the campus from the football game, you were right there, so you could go drink and not be harassed. And if you wonder why 911 wasn't called, use your brain, guys. Maybe you didn't go to college. You don't need to go to college to understand that. You want to get off campus and you want to have a beer with your friends. And if you got somebody who's 21 and somebody who's not 21, you better talk to the person who's 21 before you call 911. Or that's standard protocol, right? That's sort of standard protocol, because if that 6-pack in the fridge has got 2 beers and those 2 beers are in somebody's room that they should be in, now graduation, your finals are over. You're sitting in you're getting a citation or who knows what goes with that. So
beer.
People can read between the lines and understand what was probably going on.
911.
Yeah, no, for sure. The back door, and you mentioned that maybe he'd been there before. I think everybody's seen this image where they use these stools to secure the back sliding glass door after the fact. Was it broken? Was there something wrong with it?
I've been told that all those doors do not work correctly. When I say all, that there's a lot of construction that was done around the exact same time. So maybe that was just a certain area that hadn't been developed, and then it got developed.
Okay. Give a shout out to Layla. Bring your beer spray. I feel Steve G wants BK to be guilty, but I think he's wrong in my opinion. 22 months, Layla. Thank you for your opinion there. Thank you for being a member for 22 months. Noel, do you think Haley's car video the whole weekend? No, I don't. No, I wish, but I don't. Thank you, Noel. You're a sweetheart. Thank you so much. Upstate New York, member for 6 months. Do the Diddy. Thank you. Jennifer L. Lana, do you think the defense is keeping all these interviews and posts the G family has done on their Facebook group or BK as a form of influencing the jury? All this talking that Steve is doing just doesn't seem smart. Doesn't seem smart. I have no idea. I think that Steve likes Daniel. I think that he wanted to do an interview with him. And I think that Steve wanted to vent. And Ashley Banfield and the rest of mainstream media is not going to allow an interview like this. He's uninterrupted. He gets to not be cut. I think I love that he did an interview with Daniel. Somebody that he feels comfortable with, someone that he trusts, letting him speak. And I think that that's got to, think about that. He goes on fucking News Nation or whatever fucking channel and they're clipping his shit. Like, I'd be fucking so frustrated with that shit. So here he's not getting his statements clipped. So, and like, I don't know. I'm a fan that he came and talked to Daniel versus anybody else. Ashley, I wish a motherfucker would for $1.99. I wish an MF would. That was from a comment that Steve said, if I run into any of these people on the streets. Well, I don't think that Steve's talking about me, for the record. I think Steve would have a beer with me. In fact, if I see him, I plan on asking him if I could buy him a beer. Shelly, for a member for 2 months. Thanks for the coverage, Lana. Thank you, Shelly, for being a member for 2 months. I appreciate that. Justin, what is up? What is up? What is up? Welcome, new member. Ashley says, $4.99. He's 100% speaking on this case to raise money for his GoFundMe. Thank you, Ashley. I don't know if I agree necessarily with that. I just made my statement before of what I think. And I'd want to not be cut if I was speaking as well. So, Ariel, welcome, new member. Ashley, I wish a motherfucker would. Brian, $10 super sticker. Thank you. Also want to give a shout out to from my Cash App. I think it's my Cash App, PayPal, Cash App. Let me see which one. Give a shout out to Too Much Mom. Thank you for your passion. $20. Thank you so much, Too Much Mom. I appreciate that. And then Goldie for Love You, Lana. Thanks again for all you do. $100. Thank you so much, Goldie. Now, I don't know if this is the same Goldie. Insiders, $20. I'm not an insider. Also, I want to know who he's talking about. Who are these Coke fucking heads? I want to know. I'm going to fucking take names. Steve, please email me these Coke heads because I want to get a good laugh at these snorting ass motherfuckers. Sick fucks. Ashley, $4.99. Case closed. The victim's dad said BK did it. No due process is necessary. Additionally, if you don't agree with him, he's going to get you if he sees you. Again, I think he's just a dad venting. But Ashley, I wish a motherfucker would. Mama J, member for 25 months. Cheers to you. This whole interview blew my mind. Yeah, I mean, like I said, mainstream media is not going to. Jane Doe, defense must go hard on Dylan. She is not a victim. She was witness to a crime and did very questionable things that she must answer for. You want a couple things out of a trial. You want them to be fair. You don't want to have to do it again. And you want to get to the truth, right? So, Goldie, remember for 2 months. Goldie, same Goldie. Yes, 2 months. Thank you so much, Goldie. Okay. You rock. Thank you. Let's see. I think we're getting closer. I'm just going to speak.
So then those sliders are very common. So you can push the slider towards the lock and hit it, and it will pop it up. So that was well known that those sliders weren't very secure at locking. So I don't have any idea that that's what this person did, but I was told that even if you lock that slider, that would be a place where you would want to, or you're a person who's going to sneak into somebody else's home, a burglar, that would be an ideal door to try to test.
Yeah. There was a time not too long ago where Ann Taylor was talking in one of her hearings, and they were mentioning that there wasn't any DNA of the victims inside his vehicle, but they mentioned something about being sprayed all over the place. Now, I don't know if that's something that maybe CSI guys did to try to find something, or is there maybe, are you aware if they found anything in the car that could lead to like maybe?
I'm glad you bring this up because nobody talks about this part. So don't believe me. Go do your own search. Go research. Go to a paid version of AI. There's some AIs that have legal descriptions in libraries. Go look it up. 6 weeks in a car, that DNA is gone. Even if you leave it there, it's going to be contaminated. It's going to degrade. So they were like, don't be surprised if we don't find anything in there because it's sitting in outdoor weather where it's going below freezing to up to 70 degrees. They literally look at all the temperatures.
Okay, then Jennifer Coffinduffer should lose her job, right? Thank you there to the Transparency gifted 5 memberships. Ashley gifted 5 memberships. Thank you. This is complete opposite of what Coffinduffer was saying, that everybody was saying. The complete opposite. In fact, it's not that the DNA just wasn't there. It's the fact that there was also, and I talked to Scott Roeder about this, what's a bigger thing that you want to look for is a cleanup, like chemicals being used to clean the motherfucking car out. I completely disagree with that statement to say there's not DNA in a car 6 weeks later. I mean, let me ask you this. Do you think the sheath would still have DNA on it 6 weeks later? Why don't we test it?
Every single day that vehicle was outside. It wasn't garaged. So it's sitting in the baking sun. I think getting as cold as it possibly did. I think the coldest was something like 20-some degrees. And then the hottest it got was like 60-some degrees. But inside a car, you amplify that right on up. So yeah, this individual clean, they sprayed with something, but even if they left something there, six weeks inside of a car, it wasn't going to come back. It wasn't, at least that's how it was described to me. This stuff's not going to come back, or don't be surprised. They would have been very surprised if they found something that was usable. They're saying, no, it could be under a carpet seal or something to protect it. It would have needed something to protect it.
Okay, then let's be real. Then why did they search Brian Kohlberger's house? Why did they take everything apart in his house? It would have been 6 weeks, later in the house, in the apartment, in the car, I mean, that's just. I wonder what FBI agent told him that's like watching this saying, wait, Steve, you got that part wrong that you said. I just busting his balls to say, oh God, no, he kind of butchered that one. So I give him grace there. I just think that he misunderstood whoever relayed this message to him.
Because it was in direct sunlight, like literally in 24 hours, DNA can start becoming corrupt in sunlight, especially sunlight inside of a car. So, this stuff will probably be brought up in the trial, but I never hear anyone ever talk about, hey, this car literally drove from Washington all the way to Pennsylvania. That's a lot of exposure. I wonder if this person just cleaned it up, or if they found something, it just didn't come back as anything that was viable because it was 100% contaminated.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're hinting at. There was some contamination. I do know that the FBI went through that car piece by piece. And unlike some of these people, I think they do a very good job. And I think they're very skilled at what they do. And if they didn't find anything, then there wasn't much to be found. But again, there's definitely going to be a sense of some corruption. And they did find, like you said, there were some cleaning supplies that I hope that they can actually be traced back to a certain lab. Because not everything is purchasable over the counter. There's certain things that you have to have a license to purchase.
Yeah, exactly. There's another case that had occurred. I want to say the last name was Porco or something like that. Or Porco, a guy out of Rochester, New York, drove 3 hours, and he took the life of his mother or his father and his mom with an axe to the heads of both of them. And he drove 3 hours back, and when they searched his Jeep, no blood, he stood over him when he did it. Now, the reason that they believe that he was able to accomplish this, because there was no cleanup, no sign of a shower or anything like that, was because he was a veterinarian tech, and at his place of business, they had I guess materials that would protect veterinarian techs during surgeries, and that's what he had worn. And he was able to drive 3 hours back without getting any DNA. The only DNA, I think, the DNA that they actually got him that ended up convicting him was he went to a toll booth and he got the DNA off of the sticker, the receipt that he got from there, and so that's what ended up doing him in. But I think that there's the possibility, especially when you see that 2020 May letter final that he wrote about how what to wear so that way you don't contaminate a scene. I think we're going to see a bunch of that in his purchases, and I think that's going to be something else that does him in.
Yeah, it's just another record that they were able to pull off where, yeah, I mean, he talks about the right outfit that you would want to commit this crime in, and then they have him purchasing it. Maybe it's not exactly the same, but we all know what a Dickies outfit, one of the things, it's basically what Michael Myers wore.
Yeah.
So, it's I guess how people like to be lied to. They like to be manipulated and strung around. It's a bizarre thing for me, as a father. I never want that for my kids. I want my kids to think on their own and not be naive and get led astray. But maybe some people that's just not for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there are some folks, it doesn't matter. I had one guy literally tell me that, because I guess there was a vehicle in Eugene, Oregon. I don't know if you remember that one that was crashed on the side of the road. Apparently that belongs to somebody at one point lived in Colorado, and the 1122 residents at one point, one of the investors had a property somewhere else in Colorado. That's too much of a coincidence. That's too much. Don't worry about what BK's doing. That's all coincidence. But that car being from Colorado and somebody being from over there from Colorado, different parts, different people, everything else, it's wild, the conspiracies that they believe in. Well, Steve, I don't want to take too much more of your time. Is there anything else that you want to get out to the world about anything?
I don't know if I've heard anyone repeat because I want to bring a little bit of clarity, because people don't realize that, like the interviews that I do on some of the TV channels, they're pretty much live, and even if they're not live, they're not scripted in any shape or form. So we can't go into details like this. So I want to take advantage of it. On that Brian Talley, his little thumbs up asshole pic. I think I figured it out. I think it's like 14 hours later, he's calling in sick for work, and that's the only day he ever called. So he's obsessed with the crime that he did, and going through the media. This is all going to be part of the search history. You guys are all going to see it, and there's a thing. There's exclusive knowledge. If you know about a certain part of a crime before it's made general public, or maybe before it even happens, it's pretty damning. To me, there's nothing more damage. But I also thought people would change their tune when the Amazon order puts the murder weapon in his house, and his own family's like wondering what the heck's going on. And when I say family, I believe it's just one sister that was really, really helpful, where the other people weren't so much helpful.
I mean, they're pretty specific on the March 20th, March 30th time frame for that.
So Steve's saying that Brian Kober called off work the day, aka Monday, and he's never called off before. And his thumb pick, he takes that pick, and then 14 hours later, he calls off work. Allegedly. He called this little asshole pick.
That night purchase, yeah, 100%.
I don't understand what we don't. Question was, is he doesn't see people talking about that or asking about? I guess I'm confused over what people would be asking about that pick. I thought it was taken at 10 o'clock, like just in the morning on Sunday.
Yeah, somebody was able to tell them exactly when that happened, even though the history had been deleted. Why do you delete this? I mean, why would you delete that? If you're this outdoor hunter, CSI, because I hear all these people, oh, he's a CIS grad. He's going to have all this weird stuff. You're not going to have knowledge of a crime, bro. You're not going to have knowledge of the crime. That is not public knowledge. You're not going to have it. I don't care. And it doesn't explain doing surveys and doing all these weird things and creeping every girl out. And the list of the red flags is what really frustrates me, because this guy had been harassing girls all the way back to high school. We've talked to people all the way to high school. Like the girl that was literally like, he's obsessed with me. And it was like extremely embarrassing. I'd walk into the classroom and everyone was like, is he going to be that awkward weirdo that stares at you all day long? You know? And so this goes all the way back to school, and they've interviewed and talked to all these different people. So it frustrates me that you can harass people at school, and because of the way the system is, you kind of go unnoticed. You kind of are able to pull it off because nobody wants to drag those victims into a court case. Nobody wants to do a police report, say this girl is absolutely petrified of this boy and she's crying at night and all that kind of stuff. No, they basically remove the two and then pretend like it never happened. And that he had been removed from so many different situations because some girl came forward, all the way up to WSU, all the way to WSU. He was still getting away with it, still being able to harass these girls. And
Okay, well, Steve, if that's all true, then for me, that's fucking, I'd be so irate, pissed, right? And no, people don't just get to harass people and it's just okay. Like, why wouldn't any of these girls do anything about it, to take it to somebody to do something about it? And those people that were supposed to do something about it didn't do something about it because this could have prevented them, like 4 murders. I mean, what are we talking about here? That's confusing right there for me to understand that it was reported. I mean, in this day and age, no, I'm sorry, you don't get to harass people. Like if this is the day and age, like that doesn't happen.
it's a very frustrating thing to see how many failures led to your daughter's death. And,
I would agree.
But we're
if that's accurate, like I'd be fucking pissed. Like how did that happen?
We're working on this to make sure that we can pass some laws that try to help another family from having to go through a BK type because unfortunately this is probably going to lead. I mean, that Georgia kid was a fan of his.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia school shooter, I don't know his name.
Yeah, I remember he called himself a pro-burner.
What?
So it's already happening. So when people see why I'm on a camera and why I'm talking about the death penalty and the firing squad, it's not that I'm into this stuff and I ever would have talked about it. It's just I know there's fans and trying to save another family in another school and another place of business from dealing with somebody like this. You know, dreams of Gander. He literally wrote about how he just felt like people were sacks of flesh. I mean, everything this guy did, and to think that some people are still following a narrative that he has been all set up. Like, who set you up when they don't even know you are? That's another way. You're going to plant somebody's DNA and they're not in CODIS? What are you, stupid? And there's criminals all around your community that you could literally plant that and they'd be arrested and never see a day of light and it'd be over and done with. Nobody would even question it. But you're gonna go after this PhD guy who you're gonna have to do this whole IgG thing to. It's gonna spend weeks working on it. It doesn't even make sense. Who sets up somebody like that? Yeah. So I appreciate you giving an audience and helping set the table straight and help bringing out as much truth as we possibly can. I always say go to Idaho's webpage, go look at the court records, go through it. Don't take my word. Don't take Daniel's word. Go look yourself. Verify everything that you hear, and hopefully this summer we can get this case over with, and you'll see it play out. And it's going to end. I know exactly how it's going to end.
Yeah, no, I have a strong suspicion on how it's going to end as well. Knowledge of the crime. I mean, there was a late 911 call. He may have seen somebody. Is it possible that he made a search during the time before the 911 call came out?
He felt very confident to return to that scene at 9:00, right?
Yep.
I wonder why he felt so confident.
It's true. That is true. Those were one of the things that boggled my mind, for a while now. It's like he was able to go back. He went back. I mean, the scene could have been discovered at any point. The camera could have been set up and it could have been documented.
Okay, so this is pure, just so we're clear, people have messaged me about this, and I want to put this out there. Nowhere in any documents does it say that Brian Kober Googled the Idaho murders before the murders were known to the world. But right here at the end, this is what a girl literally asked me in a text message thread. And I said, what in the actual fuck are you talking about? I'm going to read our dialect. Lana, how do you feel about the 100-yard thing? 23 times during 10 to 4 a.m. First of all, that's not what is out there. The 23 times during 10 to 4 a.m. is allegedly random times. The defense is saying, how could you even have this stat if you didn't do certain things? How do I feel about the 100-yard thing? I feel as confident as in Boyd Jackson as I do about the 100-yard thing. In order to, you have to rely on the people and the devices and what they're using to get the information. So right now, I'm going to wait to see what Nick Balance has to say. And then I get, Lana, what about his Google search of Idaho murders before a 911 call? And I said, his Google search flashlight. What? I said, oh, like how they said Jen McCabe didn't Google search at 2:27 a.m. and it was an artifact from later. I said, who said this? I said, Steve G? Yes. I said, LOL. I said, I haven't watched Steve's interview. She says, yeah, but it's in all the documents. And I said, what documents? I'm in Amish country at the moment. I can't. I said, Google before 911 is in documents? I said, what doc? LOL. Because they're not in any documents. Now, she says, I didn't pull this out of my ass. Join the Facebook group. It's all there with links. I said, join what? I will refuse to join any Facebook groups. I said, what the fuck? Idaho student murders case discussion. I said, fuck all that. I said, have a good day. I said, for your information, the radius has to do with cast. I said, and there are no documents on any of this Google searches before the 911 call. So then where did they get that from? I read it. I said, where did you read this? It's there. I said, oh, let me guess, in an outline from Reddit. I said, who, where are you getting this from? And then I get a fucking screenshot. I said, let me just show you something. Go ahead and Google these words. Google, did Brian Kohlberger Google the Idaho murders before 911 call? Just Google that. If that was true, okay, your Google would light up like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like, and you'd be, so I proved that. I was like, this is wild, but here you go. I said, girl, stop with the crazy talk. I gotta go. I got shit to do. Then I get a screenshot from somebody named Nana's post. Who the fuck is Nana? I don't know any of this shit. I'm over here just like, I gotta go. I don't have time for this. So I said, no, let's go back to your Google about this murder before it was reported. Show me that. I said, or don't. I'm truly not interested. Tell Nana those are from the footers of Balance's report that used TA, the same records that they say that they don't have. I was like, I don't got time for this shit. Those are my best friends. I said, who the fuck is Nana? You're showing me screenshots from somebody named Nana. I said, who the... Anyways.
Many cars that were driving by at any point, and he went back. So it's interesting.
Yep.
Well, I want to thank you again for coming on. Maybe after this is all over, if I can get you back.
All right, there we go. Okay, so how I feel about this is, well, I need to digest some of this information, but tell you what, all you fucking pro-burgers out there, you better stop it. I don't call myself, I call myself a truth seeker. And all I found that had me like beside myself was I cannot believe. So tomorrow I'm going to go over the 911 stuff, but I about fell off the chair, onto the floor when I saw that the grand jury testimony from DM and BF state that all the girls went up to Kaylee's room and that Xana and Ethan were not home by 2:00. And I just fell. I said, wait, what the fuck? What the fuck is going on here? So what time did Ethan and Xana get home? And how did they get home? And I personally think it has something to do with how they got home as to why it could be in the probable cause. So, again, this is the first time me hearing it, seeing it. I think we should have WSU Kim back on and ask her some questions. That's what I think. I got some questions. I want to talk about the punching in the face. I want to talk about the multiple weapons. And I want to talk about why does anybody punch somebody in the face if you have a knife? If I have a knife and I'm able to like go at you, why would I punch you? Why wouldn't I just, I don't know, take you out with my knife that I have? So, but as a parent, I can get behind Steve Goncalves and him wanting to shred somebody that would kill their daughter, their son, their kid. But I think there's some really big nuggets in there. So we'll discuss later, though. Go get some rest. I'm going to get some rest. I'm going to rest my throat. Thank you to the moderators for being in chat. Thank you to everybody that's donated. Ms. Harris, 5 memberships. Cheers. Jane Doe, I was a witness/victim in high-profile case in LA. 2 trials. I still do not know any of the details. I can't see until appeal is over. How does he know all of this overwhelming evidence? Well, I personally believe that the FBI and the cops were telling him. I think he makes that known. Mouse, member for 19 months. Thank you, Lana. Jury pool at risk. I don't think Steve's on a gag. I think, when was it? Was this yesterday or the day before? I can't remember. I'm curious if he knows about the newest documents. But Lana, call me Lakeisha. It's my alter ego. I will. God bless the truth seekers. Hey, Farley. Fuck off, Farley. All right. All right. Peace out, guys. I got a lot to think about. But happy that he did this interview with Daniel. I will say that. I was happy to see that he did it with Daniel. If I had to fucking listen to Gray Hughes, I'd fucking just... All right, guys. Peace out. And thank you, Daniel, for letting me do live commentary. Appreciate that. Good night, everybody.